This morning, we're here to examine the safety and other benefits associated with advanced nuclear fuels, known as accident-tolerant fuels, ATF. Accident-tolerant fuels are for commercial nuclear power plants. These fuels have the potential to greatly increase the safety and the performance of nuclear reactors. When loaded into a reactor, this technology would further protect uranium from melting if the plant loses the ability to cool the fuel. In the event of an emergency, accident-tolerant fuels would provide significantly more time for power plant operators to prevent the release of radioactive material. Following the 2011 disaster in Fukushima, Japan, Congress established a research program at the Department of Energy to encourage the development of accident-tolerant fuels. 7 years later, we're approaching the critical window for nuclear power plants to reap the safety benefits of this technology. In addition to safety benefits, accident-tolerant fuels may also provide meaningful economic benefits. For example, these fuels would allow nuclear power plants to generate electricity more efficiently. In doing so, the plants would reduce costs and generate less nuclear waste. To realize these benefits, these fuels must be developed, tested, licensed, and deployed commercially. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission plays the principal role in this process. The NRC has the exclusive authority to license and regulate the civilian use of nuclear materials. Approving new nuclear fuels can be a challenge. Fuel vendors must first test the fuel in rigorous experiments. The NRC then must validate the results of these tests through highly complex computer modeling. Finally, the NRC must ultimately license the new fuels for use in a power plant. The NRC, the Department of Energy, and the nuclear industry are all carefully considering ways to facilitate this work. In April of this year, the NRC commissioners held their first public briefing on what needs to get done prior to licensing these accident-tolerant fuels. The briefing helped the agency's staff to develop a project plan for regulating accident-tolerant fuels, which the staff issued earlier this month. Yesterday, the NRC staff held a public meeting on the plan. The private sector is also taking steps to deploy accident-tolerant fuels on an aggressive schedule. 2 fuel vendors have already loaded test materials into 2 reactors to gather critical data. This process is encouraging, though significant hurdles remain. One of the hurdles is the permanent closure of the Halden Test Center, which Norway announced earlier this summer. Since 1958, the Halden reactor provided critical information on nuclear fuels and materials to organizations within 19 countries, including the NRC, the Department of Energy, and the American fuel vendors. The Halden reactor, which would have provided key scientific data to assess the performance of accident-tolerant fuels. The NRC, the Department of Energy, and the nuclear fuel vendors will now need to adjust their existing research plans. In spite of Halden's closure, it's imperative that the NRC and the private sector stay on schedule to make an accident-tolerant fuel commercially available as soon as possible. The operating licenses for over 1/3 of our nation's nuclear power plants will expire between 2025 and 2035. If accident-tolerant fuels are available, American energy utilities will be able to reap their safety and economic benefits. Such benefits may encourage utilities to make multiple multi-million-dollar investment decisions to extend the licenses for these nuclear power plants. These new technologies would also help keep Americans employed. That includes workers in my home state of Wyoming, which produces more uranium than any other state in the country. Preserving America's nuclear fleet is not only good for the economy, it's also good for the environment. Nuclear power provides a source of clean energy to millions of American families and businesses. As this week's issue of The Economist explains, some environmental activists, they say, don't like this source of zero-carbon energy. But, and to quote The Economist, nuclear power still provides more than twice as much electricity globally as wind and 5.5 times as much as solar. So I look forward to the discussions this morning and now turn to Ranking Member Carper for opening statements.